Notre Dame Stadium for today's press conference with Dick Corbett, head football coach Marcus Freeman. A couple quick reminders: if you are in the room, please raise your hand. We will get you a microphone for your one question with a follow-up, and you'll be called on. For those of you watching on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. We will call on you as time allows. With that, Coach Freeman, your opening statement.
All right, happy Monday. Going back, revisiting the game, was really pleased at certain areas of all three phases. It wasn't perfect, and that's the game of football, but in all three phases, you saw some really good things, and that's what you want to be able to do and truly play complementary football and control the clock. And I think the time of possession was almost 40-20, and so, was really happy with that. Won the turnover margin, and those are some of the challenges that each week you try to present your team, and it was good to see us accomplish that. Players of the game for offense was it could have been any of the offensive line we decided to give to Jarrett Patterson. Did a great job. Our offensive line did a great job. The ability to rush the ball for, I think, 240-something yards. And defensively, the player of the game was Brandon Joseph, had the big pick six to start the game, had another interception that was taken away by a offsides penalty. Did some really good things, had some good tackles. And then special teams player of the game was Clarence Lewis. Obviously the punt block, but did some good things on all the special teams plays that he was in. And so, again, the message to our guys is continue to embrace who we are, embrace our identity, enhance the things that we're doing, and truly try to work at the deficiencies that we're having. We got to improve. That's a challenge every single week. That's the beauty of a season, is that you're constantly trying to improve. And, we obviously have areas that we got to improve at, and that's a challenge to continue to enhance and improve those areas too. So as we move forward to this week, we obviously know we have a huge challenge ahead of us. A well-respected football program, coach, a great football team that's coming into Notre Dame Stadium, and our team will be ready to roll, and we're excited for the opportunity to play Clemson. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Third row on your left, Tim Priester.
Coach, a week ago today, you said you had to be physical with Garrett Schrader, and we had heard about him being banged up going into the game. How aware were you of that, and how does that influence your approach and game plan with a quarterback?
Yeah, I really didn't know personally that he was banged up until maybe late in the week. We had heard, hey, quarterback may not play, and then I know the Clemson game was a physical game. He took some hits, but he's a competitor. He'll battle, and I figured we'll see him. And so no matter if he was banged up or not, we know if a team's going to run their quarterback, you have to be able to be physical on that guy, and that's an important position. So if you're going to run your quarterback as a defensive football team, you got to make sure that you're physical when you can, within the rules, on a quarterback running the ball. And so we knew that would be a challenge. I don't know if there was anything particular that happened that made them make the decision to pull him for the second half, but again, we tried to at least make sure, man, if you're running the ball, we're going to have to try to tackle you physically.
J.D. Bertrand had another strong game, and he seems particularly good at knowing the opposing team's game plan and diagnosing things. I wonder if you could comment on that, number one. And number two, in your experiences as a coordinator and linebackers coach, who are some of the guys that you've coached that were really dialed into what the opponent was doing?
Yeah, I would have to say J.D. Bertrand probably sets the standard. Again, coming in last year, I think the last year when I came in as defensive coordinator, I didn't know much about J.D. Bertrand. Didn't probably play much the year before. And the thing I remember about J.D. is every day he would ask me, hey, Coach, when can we watch film? When you're a new coordinator, it's, okay, yeah, you want to come in and watch film? Let's watch a little bit of film. Every day, religiously, he would say, when can we watch film? And it could be 6, 7 in the morning. It could be 7 or 8 at night. My family wasn't here at the time, so I was here all night, and he would come in exactly when I would say come in, and almost to the point sometimes you roll your eyes like, man, you're back. Shoot, you remembered. But that's him. And you look at his brother. I don't know much about baseball, but it's got to be something in that family. 2 young men that maximize their abilities. right? And that's the challenge that I think our entire team could really learn from that is if we can get every individual, which you're never going to do, to maximize their God-given abilities, and that's J.D. Bertrand, man. He probably don't want to hear me say it. I don't know if he has as much ability as everybody in that room, the linebacker room, but he maximizes what he can be because of the way he prepares, the way he takes care of his body, the preparation. He's a guy that is on a timer in terms of when he goes to sleep, how many hours he goes to sleep, what he puts in his body. A guy I remember similar to that was probably A.J. Hawk. I played with him at Ohio State that was just truly everything was regimented. Everything he did. And I'm not saying J.D. Bertrand is A.J. Hawk. I'm just saying that he maximizes his God-given abilities, and you're seeing the rewards of it in the game.
Third one, you're right, Tim O'Malley.
Coach, offensively with the screen game, a couple of drops. Otherwise, you'd have much bigger stats on the season from your screen game. How do you evaluate it so far, and what do you need to have improving here in November when it becomes an important part of the rushing attack to complement the rushing attack?
The screen game, yeah, it's an important part of our offense where there's been some opportunities that we haven't truly executed, and a lot of it happens to be on the ball, and I think about the one to Lorenzo Styles last week, and Drew knows he's got to give him a better ball, and I'll always tell any wide out running back that has a chance to get their hand, tight end has a chance to get their hands on the ball, your job is to make the quarterback look good. But, Drew would be the first one to come up here and tell you, I got to throw him a better ball. And, we got to make sure that we catch those really tough balls that are at times hard to catch.
Secondly, Jordan Botello made an impact. Obviously, he's been doing it on special teams, but this is his first game really making an impact defensively. How do you like to use him? What are his skill sets that can really help you guys defensively?
Yeah, I mean, you saw his ability to rush the passer, his ability, he's a physical football player. He's a great example of the message I said to the team yesterday is that, we're going into week 9, and the ability at certain positions to still have that healthy competition, that we don't know who's going to start. We'll decide after this week of practice. We don't know who's going to be the second Viper in the game. Jordan Botello, Junior, we'll decide based off the way we practice. And it's a way to continue to remind those guys how important practice is. And Jordan had a great week of practice. And, he got the opportunity to play in the game. And with that opportunity, he was productive. And so, but that doesn't have anything to do with this week. And so the message will be the same thing. Your playing time will be determined off of how you practice. And I think what he sees is, okay, if I practice well, I'm going to get an opportunity. With an opportunity, I can show him, hey, how good I can be. But there is no room, as I've said this before, there's no room for gamers, right? We need great practice players. That's what our team needs them to be.
Third row on your left, Pete Byrne.
I know you guys try and take a micro view this time of year, today and then tomorrow and this week, but as you keep a pulse on the bigger picture for your program, how big would a victory this Saturday be for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, you got a chance to, victories, they do two things for you, really. One, they get you a great feeling. And anybody in this room that's been victorious, no matter what you've done, you get a feeling, an emotional feeling of being victorious. The other thing it builds confidence. Those two things are important, and that's the chase that we all have is to chase that feeling of being victorious, but also that confidence, and that's what losing sometimes does is it takes away confidence, right? You obviously don't get the feeling, but you take away confidence. But there's a lot of lessons you learn from failures, and that's what I told our team. The challenge is to, within a win, right, we know we're going to get that great feeling of being victorious. You're going to gain confidence, but, can you take some of those lessons that you learned from failures and the ability to be selfless, the ability to be urgent in fixing our mistakes, the ability to be really intentional in our work, all those things really come to fruition when you lose, right? And so the challenge for us is to continue to be able to have victories and to get that reward, but also continue to have that sense of urgency that you have during the failures, And so what would a win like this do for our program? It's going to continue to help us gain confidence in what we're doing, who we are. But it also, man, it's that emotional feeling that you get when you're victorious, man. There's no better feeling in the world.
Would it provide you any sort of reassurance that what you're trying to build is working, given how good they are?
Yeah, it's confidence, right? And reassurance, confidence, all the same word, right? And that, it's I have a belief in what we're doing. I think what I've learned in these 8 games is that it's never as you plan, right? Is that you have those bumps in the road that you have to kind of figure out and really learn as a leader, okay, this is what you thought you should do. Now, how do you adjust, right? Not just, I said this after the game, not just trust the process. How do you fix it, right, to get those results that you want? And so, would a win versus Clemson help me build confidence in the things we do? Absolutely. That's what victories do.
Front row, short right, John Bryce.
Hey, Marcus, you reference about overcoming adversity or how do you respond to losses and things of that nature. So I'm wondering, as you approach the way you handled Audric this past week after he'd had some tough times, how do you strike that balance between riding him back out there versus helping him get through the ball protection issues, and what are maybe some of the longer-term benefits with the way you handle it?
Yeah, I think it's really important as a coach to make sure your players know you believe in them, right? And that's the one thing that never wavered with Audric is the belief in him being productive and the things he can do as a running back. Now, belief and work and practice are two different things. We had to be very intentional on the things we did with ball security with him in practice, That has nothing to do with the belief I have in Audric, to me. But we're insane if we don't think we don't change certain things that we do in practice, to get the results we want. So this week in practice, we did some different things in terms of ball security with Audric and with all the running backs. And Coach McCullough brought some different ideas, and it was really good. But it's going to be continuous, that work in practice, that we do, the intentional work to make sure that, we don't let fumbling the football become something that's a staple of our program. We can't. Ball security is so important. And so you can't just say it without doing the work. And but the belief in Audric, that never wavered. And so that kind of goes back to the question I was just asked, and that the belief in what we're building here, the belief in what our program will obtain, it isn't going to waver. It isn't wavering, but the work, the intentionality of our work has to continue to change to get the results that we want. Same thing with Audric.
And then you've more than once called Brian Mason the best special teams coach in America. You said that very early after hiring him. So I'm wondering, what did you see in him that led you to believe that at Cincinnati? And was there a specific moment or moments on the practice field or something you guys did in staff meeting together, or just what led to that?
Yeah, I've worked with Brian Mason since 2011 when I was at Kent State, and we hired him as a defensive GA. And Mace has those qualities in terms of work ethic, intelligence, the ability to connect with players that you see here 10, 11 years later that, to me in my mind is he's one of the best, right? And he does a great job. But why? Is because of his work ethic. Why? Because of his intelligence. Why? Because of his ability to teach and relate to players. You can have all these thoughts in your head, but if your players can't go out and execute it and have a belief in what you're presenting, you're not a great coach, right? You might be really smart, but coaches are as good as their players can perform. And that's what really, continues to make my belief in Brian Mason so strong. And you know what? He's continuing to get better. I mean, listen, you're not going to trick anybody. You've blocked 3 punts in the last 2 games, I think 5 this year. So, and it's not just punt block. I challenged the special teams unit in kickoff return. We had been below average in kickoff return. What you see last week, we got one opportunity and it came out for 30-something plus yards and could have went almost. We get one more block, it could go farther. And so that's what you love to see, guys that step up to a challenge, but also enhance the things they're really good at.
Second row on your left, Tyler James.
Marcus, Howard Cross was dealing with the ankle issue earlier in the season, and I imagine even when he was still playing since then, he's probably been dealing with that. What kind of toughness have you seen out of him that sort of culminates in him batting that pass against Syracuse?
Yeah, it is. He's a tough guy, man, and he had an ankle injury that kept him out, and then battled back, and I think he tweaked it a couple of times in practice. And those ankle injuries, those high ankle sprains, can be more nagging than actually a break. Like it's hard sometimes because it's hard to truly recover in the course of a season, but he's a tough dude. He is a tough guy, works his tail off, and I kind of challenged the D-line room. We need some more. We need to get some batted balls, and I said we might be, height deficient in that room, but then you got a guy like Howard Cross that he claims he had two ball breakups or whatever, knock the ball, tip the ball. One turned into an interception. The other one's still a little debatable. Might have to watch the TV copy, but it's a point of emphasis to get your hands up. But Howard Cross is a warrior. He's going to do great. He's been doing great things for us and will continue to do great things for us.
In recent years, teams and fan bases like Clemson's that don't get to play here often, they tend to be well represented in the stadium on Saturdays. Is that something you have to prepare your team for this week?
No, I don't know if it'll be any different. We played Cincinnati last year here in the stadium, and there was some red. It sticks out when you're, a bright color maybe, red or orange, and, in Notre Dame Stadium. But it's a home field advantage, to play a team like Clemson at Notre Dame Stadium. It's a huge advantage for us, and then you go from a game like last week where you're in that loud dome and, everything's got to be on silent count, and it was tough, man. We had 2 pre-snap penalties, if not more, because of it. And so we're definitely grateful to be back home, especially to play a team like Clemson in our home stadium. I think that's an advantage for us.
Mike Bird, on your right. Pete Sampson there, right?
The last time you faced a defensive line like this, no Patterson, not really at the 5 guys seeing one set of eyes thing. How much of a opportunity is this for this offensive line to sort of like test, okay, this is how much better we've got?
We're going to find out. You're going to go against the best. And who's the best? I don't know. There's a lot of really good defensive line. Not a lot, but there's a few schools that have elite defensive lines. This is one of them. And I know Ohio State did too, but, across the board, they're so deep, and they're talented. They're disruptive, man, and it's not just one guy. So it's going to be a big challenge. Our offensive line is playing at a high level, and they're getting better, but let's measure ourselves against the best. And, across the board, I can name every single one. They got NFL defensive linemen across the board. That's going to be a huge challenge, but I know our guys, they're ready. They're excited. Any competitor, I've said this before, wants to measure yourself against the best. And so our guys will be excited for this opportunity.
This might be a better question for the offseason, but Jack Swarbrick's talked in the past about how he sees some similarities to how Clemson does its business and how Notre Dame can. Do you see any similarities there about how they run the program there? And I don't know if Dabo's sort of career arc, first-time head coach, it was a little bit uneven at first, kind of found his footing. If you see any sort of like, that could be your story here.
If that is, it's going to be a great story. And that's the reality of it, Pete, is I have the utmost respect for that guy. And I don't know him, never talked to Dabo Swinney, but have really paid attention from afar. And, you only hear great things from his players about the type of leadership. The results speak for itself, and he's done great things for that football program and college football, period. And so, again, to sit here and if you got a chance to say, hey, your career can, reciprocate Dabo Swinney's, you're going to be dang happy.
Front row on your left, Patrick Engel.
Marcus, you touched on it when talking about Jordan a little while ago, but when you mentioned still figuring out like who might the second Viper be, and I noticed Riley playing inside a lot on Saturday, Justin going from Viper to strong side. What's been kind of the change in the motivation for seemingly having a lot of those guys be pretty movable parts there, and maybe even Junior too with playing some Viper?
Yeah, I think it's one, it speaks to the depth of the position, but two, it speaks to the technical side defensively of Coach Golden, and hey, this week, what do we want to do with a Riley Mills? How do you want to play a Justin Adamiola, and guys that can be inside or outside and do some different things? It speaks to, hey, we can move these guys in multiple different positions, but I think the most important message it speaks is the depth, and that's what you want, and I know we've gotten 5 offensive linemen that have played 90% of the plays, but the snaps, but you know what? Depth is still something you want to create. right? It's something you want within your program. One, it speaks to, the foundation of your program. You're not just one group deep, but also speaks to, the type of players, man. If they're good enough to help you, you got to get them opportunities to play, and get them on the field and let them produce. That's the one thing that the transfer portal will do, too. You see a lot of unhappy guys that are maybe good enough to play that decide to go in the transfer portal, and so it's a great reminder. One, depth is important. You want to try to wear teams out, but two, it's that if guys are good enough to play, you got to find ways to get them in the game.
So were those moves with Riley going inside and Justin kicking out to opposite, were those just like matchup based on what Syracuse did, or kind of something more long term?
100% on just, trying to put our guys in position to be successful versus that type of offense.
Front row, far right, Eric Hansen.
Hey, Coach. I know you were busy with your own team in 2020, but did you ever have a chance to see the Clemson Notre Dame game? And if so, what was your impression?
Yeah, I did watch the majority of it. I don't remember if we played when I was at Cincinnati or not, but I know Mickens, who was at Cincinnati with me, I said, let me watch Notre Dame play Clemson. It's a big game, and I know there was parts of the game I was in my head saying, ooh, Coach Mickens might be getting an earful right now from somebody. But, it was one of those games that I remember going in. I think it went to overtime, right? It was the last minute, double overtime, and they found a way to pull it out. And even though it was the COVID year, you saw some students run on the field. It was really cool to. But that's a heavyweight battle. That's what you get when you get a team like Notre Dame and Clemson. It's a heavyweight battle, and two great historic programs that get to go and clash it out. That it's probably going to be one of those games that come down to the last couple series and who executes the most. But I remember Ian Book throwing that long pass, I think to Avery Davis. Yep. Right? There's a couple plays that just stick out in my mind. I know that at the end of the game that they got after the quarterback a little bit, didn't give him a chance to really throw the ball in that second overtime. And I'm just thinking back, like there's plays as I'm sitting here talking to you, like just like, oh, man, I remember that play. And I think did Dorr have a big hit? I think I remember him knocking somebody. Bramley, not Dorr. Bramley, yeah. Yeah, like he rocked somebody. I'm like, man, they got a punter that's in freaking. He's physical, man. So there's some. I mean, as we're talking, like there's just plays that come to my mind. But I know at the end of the game, Notre Dame was victorious.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about was after the game, you were asked about your level of concern with Pine's inconsistencies, and I think you wanted to watch some film first. And I'm wondering kind of how you came away after watching the film.
Yeah, he's got to improve. He's got to improve in his accuracy. We got to – but there's a whole bunch more that goes into that, right? Quarterback's got to improve. We got to continue to improve our protection. And it's not just the offensive line. Protection can be with running backs. Hey, people being in the throwing lane. I wrote down a couple notes as we were watching film as an offensive staff and just saying, okay, we got to get the running back here to step up or step out of his way so the quarterback has a lane. To precision of routes. That's so important, that to the eye just watching the game, they won't understand. But to the coaches, the precision of routes are so important. That's a challenge for challenge for Michael Mayer. That's a challenge for every tight end. That's a challenge for the wideouts to be precise exactly where you're supposed to be when you run routes. And then the other thing is we got to, at some point if we're not running the ball so well, we're going to throw it more. And so right now we're running the ball pretty well. And if we don't run the ball really well, I think it's going to force us to, obviously take more opportunities in the passing game.
Front row on your left, Tyler Orca.
Marcus, I know this has been hit on a couple times, but another example of it this past weekend where you guys got out to a really hot start on the road. I'm just curious what it is maybe you could do pregame to make that happen here, or if there's something that can bring out that urgency that you've talked to here as opposed to anywhere else.
Yeah, it's got to be developed in practice. It's got to be developed in practice, man. There's no magic formula. But it's been a word over the past, really since Stanford, that we've been talking, that urgency word. It was first just having an urgency, and then after last game, I didn't love the urgency in the second half, and so we said constant urgency. This week, I don't know what the word will be before urgency, but it's going to be something urgency for this week. But it's urgency. But urgency to do what? To execute. I know you guys hate hearing that word, but it's urgency to execute. All right, that's what I get up in front of the room on Fridays. We have our team meeting, and I say, okay, we got to have urgency. We got to have urgency. Urgency to what, coach? To do your job. Urgency to execute. All right, and that's what a mindset. It's not urgency to go and score touchdowns or urgency to make sure you get a 3 and out. No, it's urgency to do your job every single play. That's got to be our mindset.
Obviously, you said some glowing words about Clemson. I'm wondering what it is when you watch film of a program like that as opposed to some of the other teams. You played some good teams this year, but what is it that sticks out when you watch these guys, whether it's across the board, offensively, defense? What do they do well that says, yeah, that's an undefeated top 5 team in the country?
Well, I think one, they're the ability to run the ball, the ability to stop the run. They're talented. You know, one thing that kind of spoke to me is they never seemed out of it versus Syracuse. They were down 21-10, 21-7, and you could look at their sideline. I like to watch sidelines, and, you know, when the quarterback, DJ, when he got taken out of the game, to watch that quarterback be the first one cheering the group on, the first one to clap the first quarterback, that tells you they got a family. They got a team. It's not a bunch of selfish individuals. It's a team. And that's what I look for when I watch opponents. Like, okay, we're playing a team that no matter what the score is, they're never out. That's one. 2, they're about what's best for the team. And that's a tough opponent. And they're talented, right? Let's just make sure we say that. They're talented as heck. And so I know we got a battle coming ahead, a tall task coming ahead of us. But listen, man, I want our guys to understand you're Notre Dame. Right, and that, you know what, this is what we do. We play in big games like this. You know, it's not a David versus Goliath. This is a heavyweight fight, and we got a dang good football team. That I've always said it, man. When we do exactly what we're supposed to do, we're a good enough football team to win every game we play. But you know what, we have to do that because we've seen if we don't execute, we don't do our job, we're not going to be victorious. And you've seen that in some of the games we played this year. So this isn't as I said, this isn't a David versus Goliath. This is Notre Dame versus Clemson, 2 powerhouse, 2 blue blood programs that are going to go battle Saturday night here in Notre Dame Stadium.
Second row on your right, Mike Bergen.
Hey, Marcus. The idea of route precision and then sidelines leads into Chancey Stuckey. And I noticed at the start of the fourth quarter, you let a few of your assistants talk, but he had the floor in that huddle for a brief time. How have you seen him grow sideline presence, willingness to say the things that need to be said to his group? And I guess where do you see that Clemson training in play now on your staff?
Yeah, he might say a couple words to the team this week on what it's like to be at Clemson, maybe. You know, we'll see what I have, you know, in my back pocket. But he's an energetic guy, one. There's been times I have to tell him to calm down. He's running up and down the sidelines. I'm like, hey, get out of the way. You can't get a penalty. But you know what I love about Coach Stuck is that, you know, he almost takes it personally, that the play of his room is a reflection of him. And, you know, the same challenges you present to that group, those individuals in that room, you can see their position coach takes the lead, and he views it as a challenge on himself. And so those dudes work tirelessly. I said this, I think, on Thursday, man, that is one of probably the most unselfish. And it's crazy because you think about wideouts, you think about, man, them are selfish dudes. But the more time I spend in that room, I'm like, you got to be unselfish because you can be perfect. Now, we need you to be perfect. You can be perfect and never get a reward for it. And people are going to say, where was he at? He ran every route. He blocked. He did exactly what he's supposed to do. He's not in the stat sheet. Nobody talks about him. You know, you make a couple good catches, but you played poorly the rest of the game. People are going to talk about how great you were. And so you have to be unselfish in that room to know that you can go as hard as you can and get 0 rewards out of it, you know. And that's why I probably love to play defense. You play hard as you can. You find your way to get to the ball. You know what I mean? And so but I love Coach Stuck and the energy he brings, but the work ethic, the mentality he brings to that room in this program has been tremendous.
And then I guess what's happened at Michigan State, that whole scene, do you talk to your team at all? A reminder that, you know, as intense as the game is and you want them to be right up to that edge. I know you guys talk about control a lot, but is that a teaching point from a distance, and is that a coach's worst nightmare?
Yeah, that you don't want to see that in a game of football, not in this game that we love. And we've grown up playing about, because it creates a narrative about maybe a group of kids, about a program, about your sport that isn't what you want, and we always use teaching examples. I usually save those for Friday. Have not brought that up, but we use them from different opponents, from different games, man, that you have to be able to control your emotions, and I don't know the details. I had just heard late last night, hey, there was an incident with the Michigan game. I've been a part of that stadium. It's tough, man, when you're going through that tunnel and everything's condensed, and after a game, it's a challenge, it's an emotional game, and but you have to control your emotions, right? You have to control your emotions, because that's a football lesson, a life lesson, and again, I can't speak on the details, but I can speak on, there's a lot of things you can do in a moment that are going to have repercussions for after that moment. And I think I saw they suspended a couple guys. I think that's one of those situations that an emotional moment can have repercussions way after that moment. And that can be as a husband, a father. It can be in society. It's everything. And that's probably at some point the lesson I'll tell our team is that the ability to control your emotions are one of human's greatest strengths. Is that you this is an emotional game, right? It's a game played with emotions, but you can't let it take you and make you out of control. And so, again, I have the utmost respect for Coach Tucker. He was a coach at Ohio State when I played. I've talked to him multiple times, and I know what type of leader he is. But you just don't want to see that in college football, period.
That's all we have for today, Coach. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you. I didn't get a chance to see your voting this week. What'd you do? Who's won?
Tennessee was 5.
And where's Alabama?
Clemson is 6. So you don't have to get
Where'd you put Alabama?
3.
You're